His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who is the founder Acharya of International Society for Krishna Consciousness. So today's topic, which we'll be going through, is Key to Success. This is the second of our 9 sessions. And like the first session, which was happiness, we will walk through the agenda, the key agenda for today's topic. So key to success. So the first item in the agenda is we'll be talking about war, which was, relevance to the Kurukshetra war, which was inevitable, right? So, and then, really if, having the expertise and organization, are these the cause of our success? Yeah? And key to success, what are those? Introduction to Lord Shri Krishna, patch-up solution or perfect solution, and then towards the end, like always, the practical tip of the day, which will be shared by Shri God. Then we'll get started today, like last time, with a short video by Radhanath Swami. And I'll just switch on that video for you.
I heard of one lady. In brief summary, she was born in a poverty-stricken village in Maharashtra, India. She never really had any education. When she was a little girl and wanted to go to school, her family made her take care of the buffaloes. When she was 8 years old, she was married. I think actually she was 9 years old. She was married to a man who was about 30. By the time she was 19, she had 3 sons, and she was pregnant. A mafia type of person who was exploiting the people of the village was especially forcing the women of the village to work really hard and paying them practically nothing. And everyone was afraid. But Sindhutai told the local collector, who was overseeing the police, and that person was stopped from what he was doing. But he was so angry. He went and told Sindhutai's husband a lie. He said, "You are such a fool. Your wife is having affairs with so many men. In fact, the child that is within her womb is my child, not yours. I've been having sex with her. If you don't kill the child and kill her, I will kill you." So the husband, the girl's 19 years old, he kicked her in the chest, not in the chest, in the stomach, repeatedly, to kill her and the child. She laid unconscious. He thought she was dead. So he dragged her to a cow shed where a whole herd of cows are being kept, thinking that people will feel that the cows just trampled her and that's how she died. So she laid there unconscious. And when she woke up, she said, she found one cow standing right above her, protecting her. There were all these buffaloes and oxen and cows walking, and they would have certainly trampled her. But this cow was keeping everything away from her. And even when the in-laws came to make sure she was dead, the cow chased them away with their horns and stood over her. She came to consciousness and gave birth to a baby girl under the cow. And she said she took a rock and cut her umbilical cord. Took about 20 slices to get free from it. And for hours and hours, the cow protected. And Sindhutai, when she got enough strength, she embraced the cow and promised, as you protected me when I was in great need, I will protect others who are in need. It's a long story, but no one would have her back. Her own family rejected her, her biological family, because according to their tradition, once you're married, you could never come back home. A foolish tradition, as many are these days. In order to not be exploited, she was sleeping in a crematorium with her little baby child. And she would collect wheat that people would put around the dead bodies, and she'd mix it with water and cook it on the fires of the dead corpses. It became such a depressing life for her. She decided, I don't want my child to live like this. So she was going to commit suicide. She went to a railway track with her child in her arms and laid waiting for the train to crush them. But as she was laying there, she heard someone crying in anguish. So she got up and she found an old man who was crying out. He was crippled. He was very, very invalid. He was crying for some food and water. So she went and begged and got him food and water. And she was thinking that old man was the voice of God. She called Krishna. She said, was telling me that I had a higher purpose in life than to commit suicide. I have something to do, something to contribute to this world. But then later in the day, she was sitting in a field wondering, what am I going to do? I have nothing. I have no one. How can I help anyone? She was under a tree, and she saw that there was a branch of the tree that a woodsman with an axe had violently cut. The branch was just hanging by a single string. But that branch was giving her and her child shade. So she was thinking, this is the answer. However much I have been beaten down, still I could do something for others. So she started going and finding homeless, abandoned, orphan children. And she became their mother, taking care of them. Somehow or other, she learned how to sing really nice, and she begged with her singing, and she provided for them, and somehow or other kept them safe. And after some time, people saw what a difference she was making to so many people that they built an orphanage for her. Over the years, she said, she's had about 1,500 children, over 1,000 grandchildren, and she's made a tremendous difference in her life. All of her children have a great education. Many are doctors and lawyers and farmers, something she never had. She's won so many awards internationally for her accomplishments. But then she explained what the most meaningful and fulfilling thing she ever did in life. Years and years later, after the president of India gave her awards and governors of states and international awards, this really old man came to her orphanage. He was starving. He was sick. He was homeless. He was asking for shelter. After a few minutes, she recognized this was her ex-husband, the person who tried to murder her maliciously. She said to him, when you left me to die, I was homeless in rags. Now you're homeless in rags, and I have a nice place with so many people. She said the most meaningful thing in her life is she forgave him. And she said, I will give you shelter, but I'm not your wife. I'm your mother. And when people would visit the orphanage, she would introduce him. This is my eldest son, and sometimes he's very naughty. She told a story. It moved me. So at one place, I shared this story, and somehow it was on YouTube. And in her orphanage, someone showed it to her. So she wanted to meet me. So in Pune, I met her. And she was with a couple other people. And we spoke for about an hour together. It was a wonderful conversation. And afterward, there was one lady who was sitting next to her, who was just beaming with smiles the whole time, but didn't say much of anything. And when I was just about to leave, Sindhutai said, I want to introduce you to this girl. She's the one who was born under the cow. She's now a medical doctor, and she's taking charge of one of our orphanages. And then she said to me, I consider all of the tragedies in my life to have been gifts to empower me to make a difference to others. She considered it all the grace of God. She said, my life has been a road with many thorns, but I made friends with those thorns, and my life became beautiful, and I could give beauty to so many other people's lives. That's one little example of influence without affluence. The power of compassion is far greater than anything that money can do. But when money and knowledge and strength and skills are built on the foundation of that compassion, then not only is our own life enriched beyond our comprehension, but we could make such a difference. We can have such an influence in the world. Each and every one of us, whoever we are, because everyone is so inherently special. And nothing and no one can take that away from us, as long as we are aware. To be an instrument of compassion, an instrument of grace, is the true influence beyond affluence. Thank you very much.
So that was a video from His Grace, His Holiness Radhanath Swami. Can you hear me? I think there's an echo.
Yes.
No, we can hear you absolutely.
Okay, thank you. So that makes us move to our first topic, which was war, which is inevitable. Now, just related to Radhanath Swami's lecture, even in last class we heard one of his lectures on happiness, right? So I would just like to say that when you get time, I would just suggest you all to watch some of his lectures on YouTube. It's a great inspiration for us as stepping stone for our spiritual progress. So just with that, when we say war, which is the problems, disturbances in our life, right? So we may not have as severe problems as Sindhutai faced, yeah, but we all do have problems. It may not be that level bad, but yes, we do. And the inspiring thing, from her story, I think, is that she found Krishna's helping hand, always in the most difficult situations of her walks of her life. So we should, also try to adapt the same, looking for Krishna's hand in everything, what we have. So moving on to just have a bit of insight further on this, yeah. So the topic, of war is inevitable. Last class we saw, that how, after the exile, Krishna came as Shanti Dut to, try to still look into the possibility of not to have the war. But with the Duryodhana being so cruel, and with his, attraction towards his material assets, it eventually, there was no other option left. So the war was inevitable. And similarly, we have, such challenges. We face challenges at almost every day in our life, right? So, and these practically, we have to face these problems. And when these problems arise, either, from your mind, from your body or environment, right? Environment is which from others, people around you. So we may always endeavor our best, to avoid these kind of negative situations or problems in our life. But still, they do come, right? So we do face such challenging situations, but it will, we have to learn to face them rather than being run away. It will not be right approach if we try to run away from them. And even if you manage to get away from it, without facing it, it might be just once or twice, but not always. So we have to eventually learn to face such problems, even in future. And, that we see that successful people, they are not the ones who run away from the problem. Rather, they face them, and not only face them, but they come out of such problems victorious, right? So still, when we look, we have so many problems in our practical life, but when we meet people, sometimes people say, well, I don't have any problem. Things are going really good with me, or because I have a good job, good house, good family, assets, whatnot, right? So we may face, superficially when we meet people, there's a smile, we see them, we find them so happy, but as we go deeper, we see a shallowness, anxiety, a depression, right? We also saw, correlating this with our last class, that how even famous personalities, even though they have, all of these, but still they end up, committing wrong actions, to the level of even suicide for some. So Krishna further explains this, in Bhagavad Gita, this shloka, which says, Matrasparshastu Kaunteya Shitoshna Sukha Dukkadaha Agamapaino Nitya Stam Stitikshashva Bharata. So, O son of Kunti, the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress and their disappearance in due course are like the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer season. They arise from sense perception, O Sion of Bharata, and one must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. So we struggle so hard to get even small happiness in our life, in our day-to-day life, right? As basic as getting the smile with the people we live with, right? But have you ever thought, that, we don't struggle at all, right, to get distressed, right? But still we get it, right? So Krishna says here clearly that this happiness and distress will come and go like the summer and winter. Yeah, because that is the basic design of this material world. Yeah, there will never be balance. There will never be a proper balance where it is only happiness or only distress. So there will always be an imbalance. Yeah. So they will come, and even if whether we struggle or not, they will definitely come. And these problems, when we know that they are going to come, and Krishna, clearly says it here. So when we think further about it, we know that 90% of these problems arise from where? From our mind, right? Now, last time we saw that, this mind is so fickle, and we try to find happiness in material things, right? Like good job, good family, good properties, whatnot. So, but we also saw that happiness does not come with those material things, right? Because mind is so fickle, it keeps changing. And we also saw how the definition in each walk of our life for happiness changes because the mind changes, right? So Bhagavad Gita will actually teach us, when we go in detail, that how to face such misbalance in our life, yeah, and how to remain equipoised, in equilibrium when something is coming on the way. So we keep thinking, that we keep thinking once we have this and that, we will be happy, and that will hit my success, right? So let's turn, and see a bit further as, whether a proper plan, a solid plan, expertise, being really organized, will this cause, success? Will this give us success? So let's look at what are the factors. Yeah, what are the steps? Yeah. How do we define success? So we always think that, let's have the right people, yeah, identify the right people, and then this is a major factor of being successful. I'll get there. Or offer them the right bait, yeah. Bait as in, what attracts them or what instigates, yeah, them in there. Estimate their strengths and weaknesses. I think SWOT analysis is, really very common in the corporate world right now, what we do, right? And then, analyze, what will be the pains and gains, and then make a really solid plan of action. This correlates so much, really, how this corporate world also works, right? So our common thoughts is that, of definition of success is, let me have, we have a checklist, something, with these top criterias, and we keep ticking, yeah. Now, definitely, these things are key, but, and also, yeah, one more factor of, carrying everyone with you, teamwork, right? We always, a leader is the one who really have a good people engagement, right? So when we see all these factors, how is this correlated to Bhagavad Gita, with the war field? Because Duryodhana had all of these, but what happened? He really failed. Yeah, he failed really badly. Now, definitely these factors are needed to be successful, but these are not all the factors, right? If this could lead to success, then Duryodhana would have been victorious, right? So we can clearly see that, only these factors do not suffice for us to be happy and successful and get what we are looking for. So let's move, to the next, this is the shloka. Last time we did the first shloka of Bhagavad Gita, which was spoken by Dhritarashtra, right? Now, we come to this shloka, which is the third shloka of the first chapter, wherein Duryodhana is saying, Pashyaitam Pandu Putranam Acharya Mahitam Chamam Vyudham Drupada Putrena Tava Shishyena Dhimata. O my teacher, behold the great army of sons of Pandu, so expertly arranged by your intelligent disciple, the son of Drupada. Now we see that, Duryodhana he was a great diplomat, right? Really well in his role. So he knew, all those characteristics which we saw to be successful. So he knew to get the right people, identify the right people. And that's what he is doing here. He's approaching, who is his teacher? Dronacharya. So he is approaching Dronacharya, highlighting how well Pandavas, army is arranged. By whom? By, he specifically mentions here that he, that son of Drupada. Instead of saying the name Drishtadyumna, he is highlighting here as son of Drupada. Why? Because again, this relates to the second success factor which we read, give the right bait, right? Why is he saying son of Drupada? Because he's trying to instigate Dronacharya. Now, when we say why, just to give you a background, some of you might know this, that Drona and Drupada were, were in learning together, right? They were friends in their childhood and during the schooling period. And during that time, Drupada had mentioned to Drona that because they were such best of friends, Drupada had mentioned that he will, once he becomes the king, he will give 50% of his kingdom to Drona. Now, years passed, and when Drupada became the king on one side, and in the opposite side, we could see that Dronacharya, he could really struggle, with his day-to-day needs, and to the extent that he couldn't feed his family as well. So he remembered this promise by Drupada, and he went to Drupada, and reminded him of his promise. Rather, after reminding, he said, just at least give me a cow, because cow was the major means for living at that time point. But Drupada, in turn, insulted Dronacharya, when he was approached, and insulted in front of others that, Drona is taking the childhood talks, which are so, informal, so seriously. So Drona, this really put Dronacharya under agony. And we all know that he was the teacher of Pandavas and Kauravas. And back then, we also know that post you finish your education, a guru asks for Guru Dakshin. So when Pandavas finished their, learning, Drona asked them as part of Guru Dakshina to get, to be victorious to Drupada, and to get him to Drona. Now Pandavas, fought with Drupada, and they were victorious, and they got Drupada to Drona. And this, and Dronacharya insulted. He did the same thing. So he insulted Drupada, and he let him go. So this put Drupada in agony, and he in turn underwent penances to get finally a son, which was Drishtadyumna, who would, who would have the power to kill Drona. Now, why is Duryodhana highlighting here son of Drupada? Because he wants to remind him of his, relationship with Drupada, as enemy, And even though Dronacharya always knew that Drishtadyumna would be the one who would kill him, he still, coached him. So he still took the schooling for him. And that's why he's highlighting that he is your intelligent disciple. So Duryodhana is trying his, he is a great, that's why we say he's a great diplomat. He really was. And he knew, in the start of the war, to go to the right person, to instigate so that they can deliver, the best, and they can, So that's to highlight the weakness of Drupada, right? So, so with that said, we'll move on to the next shloka. So this is the 10th shloka of the first chapter. So, aparyaptam tad asmakam balam bhishma abhirakshitam paryaptam tva idam etesham balam bhima abhirakshitam. Our strength is immeasurable, and we are perfectly protected by grandfather Bhishma, whereas the strength of Pandavas, carefully protected by Bhima, is limited. So here again we see Duryodhana, he's praising Bhishma, right? Because he was very confident that in presence of a warrior like Bhishma, he would definitely have the victory. So again, along with Drona, he approached the right people, which was Bhishma, right? And he was confident, of Drona's and Bhishma's support, because when the, Draupadi's, sari incident happened, they did not step up, being against. So they were quiet. So, because they did not speak up at that time point, Duryodhana was confident that they would support, their team to the best. So here, I think, what we are trying to say that he's also expertly getting everyone part of the whole plan, right? He's, like we saw, strengths and weakness analysis as well, part of the success. He's doing that with Bhishma and Drona, who are the key people for him. And then he, he also has a solid action plan in place. Yeah, they had 11 Akshami Sena with them, which is really strengthened than Pandavas, right? So he really gave importance to the team like a leader, like we said. We have to walk them along, keep them positive, motive. So so if we if we clearly see how Duryodhana's mindset was, he was a great leader, right? But the problem was that he was very much attached to the material aspects, right? And what is that? For example, so he was, he was more, he was more in turn to, have Narayani Sena of Krishna than Krishna himself. We know that story where, Duryodhana and Arjuna approached Krishna, and Duryodhana was in fact very happy to get Narayani Sena with him, because Krishna said that he would be part of the war, but he would not lift any weapon, right? So he used to think, he underestimated Krishna heavily, because he didn't think he was anything, yeah? But he knew that Narayani Sena is really powerful and he has all the power. So now with the great people, with all these solid plan of action, he also has a great enemy with him. So this is, how we can correlate this with our today's world, because, unintelligent people, even today, say that, where is Krishna? We cannot see him, yeah? And for Duryodhana, even though Krishna was just in front of him, still he couldn't see, yeah? Still he couldn't believe him as the supreme. So that is a Duryodhana thought process, that even if he had Krishna before him, he did not believe, right? So we, in today's life, for us, Krishna is giving this Gita, to really, that shows we should have faith in our scriptures, right? So it's written in various places, even in Bhagavad Gita, these scriptures, what are we referring to? Vedas, right? And in Bhagavad Gita, 15th chapter, we see 15th shloka that Krishna mentions that Vedeshya ahameva vedya. So, so what Krishna is saying is, I am the essence of all the Vedas. Yeah. So when he is the essence, to know Krishna is the essence of all the Vedas, that means, Krishna, so we should have faith in scriptures, not have Duryodhana mentality to, to not believe in, right? Then we are gonna, even though we have all several factors, we are gonna lose. Yeah? We will not come out victorious. So moving further, so even after doing such an expert management, what happened? Duryodhana failed. Now, on the other side, one side we see what all factors Duryodhana had, and on the other side we see Pandavas, right? So let's see now the, what was the actual cause of success for Pandavas, yeah? So we could see some, success signs even before the war began for Pandavas. Now, what were the signs of victory? A holy environment. We spoke about this last time, that Kurukshetra was a holy environment. It was a Dharma Kshetra. And that's why Dhritarashtra was, worried in the first shloka we saw last week, that he knew it was a Dharma Kshetra and his sons were on the side of Adharma. And because it was a Dharma Kshetra, it will have definitely an inclination towards the Dharma, right? Towards Pandavas. Then presence of Lord Sri Krishna. Yeah, so wherever there is Krishna, we'll have good fortune, right? So Lakshmi ji, yeah, we see that Lakshmi ji is always on the side of Krishna because he is Lakshmi Pati. Then presence of great devotee, Hanuman ji. Now, we also have this, correlates with, again, a background story on Hanumanji, how is he coming in picture here? So when Pandavas were in exile, Bhima, while he was in the forest, he suddenly came across, a rope kind of thing, and then he realized it's a tail. And whose tail was it? Hanumanji was lying down there. And Bhima just requested Hanumanji that, please, could you move so that I can cross? And Hanumanji said, just lift it yourself. And Bhima was so confident with his valor. We know that he had the strength, heavy strength, right? So he tried to lift the tail of Hanumanji. And then he realized, oh, so I cannot even move it, lifting is too far. So when Bhima couldn't do that, then he realized that this is, not a normal personality, it's a great personality. And when he requested him, Hanumanji to disclose himself, Hanumanji then said that, he's Hanuman. And then Bhima and he both are Vayuputra. So they are, brothers. So that's where, Hanumanji introduced himself and explained. And then, then Bhima said that after the exile, knowing Duryodhana, there might be possibility, that we might have to undergo the, war, and then he requested Hanumanji to be, to support him. And Hanumanji, promised him that, he will be in the form of a flag on top of Arjuna's chariot. Yeah. And when, Bhima roars, that will be Hanuman's roar. And we know that when Bhima roared during the war, hundreds of elephants died. That was the strength of his roar. So, so presence of a devotee is a great factor here as well. And now, how does this all, we saw how, not having, just having material aspects and just having all that success plan as Duryodhana had, we said it will not lead to success and happiness. On the other side, we are seeing for Pandavas that they had all these factors which made them victorious. Now, how can we translate this, in our day-to-day life? Yeah. So we can be successful too by making our home, auspicious. Yeah. So, and how can we make it auspicious? By regular worship of Krishna, chanting the names, keeping our house clean. Yeah. And, that will fill our home with positive vibrations. Yeah. We saw last time also a shloka from 3rd chapter, that, we have to perform sacrifice for Vishnu. This world, material world is created so that we can perform sacrifice, and that will have us, make us happy. And when we say sacrifice, we also link it, right? So we learned also the sacrifice, the key sacrifice for Kali Yuga is chanting of the Lord's name. Yeah. And this mantra, when we say chanting, it is the mantra, right? And what is mantra? When we split it, mantra. So it is, and we also learned in past, in the previous slides, that how mind is the cause for all of these disturbances, right? So mantra is, auspicious syllables which can control your mind. That's why it says mantra. Yeah. So that's why we request you all to, start chanting. And this, so overall, first was, how can you make your home auspicious? Just like the environment for the war was on Kurukshetra, right? It was auspicious. Similarly, that is how we can make our, surroundings, our home that way. Then comes, fortune, right? So where is the fortune? Where do we see Lakshmi ji always? Serving Lord Narayan, right? So if we want Lakshmi ji, then we need to also serve Narayana, right? So Lakshmi ji, the other name of Lakshmi is Chanchal Lakshmi, right? So we say Chanchala. So why? Because she keeps flickering. Yeah. So and we should not have the Duryodhana mentality. What does that mean? Is, like I said, Duryodhana wanted the Narayani Sena, the fortune, but not Narayan, not Krishna. So we should not have that mentality where, we want good fortune, but we will, that will automatically come if we serve Narayan, because Lakshmi will not go anywhere leaving Narayan. So one who chases fortune may or may not get it. Yeah. Even if you get it, it will be short term, right? But one who follows, Krishna, they will get everything. So wherever there is Krishna, there will be good fortune. And we could see that, translating that into the Kurukshetra war, right? So please, that's why we say, we see quite sometimes that, there's a worship exclusive of Lakshmi ji, without Narayana, then that will be like a Duryodhana mentality. or Ravana mentality. Same with Ravana, right? So Ravana wanted to, have Sita Mata without Ram. So that is, and then we could see what he resulted into, right? So anytime if we try to, have the good fortune, which is Lakshmi ji, without Narayana, there will be a downfall. So let's, and that's why let's worship Narayana, because Lakshmi ji will follow automatically once we start worship of Krishna. Right? So the other thing we saw as success factors for Pandavas was devotee, Hanumanji association, right? So that's how we can correlate in our life, having a good company. Yeah. So the association of selfless, pure-hearted devotees, because the devotees' aim in their life is only to serve Krishna and to help people, right? Who are not in, who are struggling in this material world, right? To spread Krishna consciousness where possible, So, so that's why please associate with pious people and devotees where possible. Yeah. So there's a saying also that show me your friends and I can tell you who you are, because that's how you turn to build it, right? So please have, pious people association and devotees association. So further then, if we have this, like, this is the verse I think we were referring to last week's, one of the questions which was raised as well. And this is, a very strong verse, which is Krishna's promise to his devotees. So it goes this way: Ananyas chintayantu mam ye jana paryupasati tesham nityabhiyuktanam yogakshemam vahamiham. So, but those who always worship me with exclusive devotion, meditating on my transcendental form, to them I carry what they lack and I preserve what they have. Yeah. So it's a strong thing. So please don't worry, Krishna promises here that he will give you, what you lack, and he will preserve what you have. Yeah. So the next topic on the agenda was introduction of Lord Shri Krishna, right? So Krishna is introduced in the later part of first chapter, yeah, in Gita. And when we see, in this world, an entry of maybe a film hero, we see it is really extraordinary, right? Any movie you see. And after every movie, there's a competition between the movies as well as, let's make something more extraordinary for our, hero or heroine's entry, right? So, but Krishna's entry in Kurukshetra, how was it? He entered as a charioteer for Arjuna, right? Such a humble position, right? So, so here we see that, who he was actually, a driver, right? What is a charioteer? He was a driver. He was playing that role for Arjuna. And, who in even our life, who would like to be a driver? We don't have all the opulence, all the strength, everything, what Krishna had, but still, we would never, think of becoming a driver, nor, we would, think of our children. I had a scenario where my son was really attracted to buses and cars at certain time point. And, his aim was that he will become a driver when he grows up. And when his grandparents heard it, they were like, no, you would be a bus owner, company owner. Why would you be a driver? So that's all we all think, right, in our day-to-day life, that why would we want, any of us to be a driver? So, but Krishna here, we can see, that he became a driver, taking such a low task, right? All for his friend and devotee, Arjuna. So, the other name of Krishna, we say, is Bhakta Vatsalya. So, so as he showcased that how, how Bhakta Vatsalya he is. So what does Bhakta Vatsalya mean? That Krishna is ready to do anything for his devotees. Yeah, that is what Bhakta Vatsalya means. Yeah. So we can see this in when he became a charioteer for Arjuna. Even, for Sudama, when Sudama visited him, we know that he even, he did all the hospitality, being a king. And what about the king of this material world? He is also the supreme personality, right? So he washed his foot, right? And then we could also see how he saved Draupadi from the misrobe. So, and also how he saved the Vrajavasis from the Govardhan hill, right? So in many places in Bhagavad Gita also we see that Krishna is actually the ultimate enjoyer. Yeah, in 5th chapter of Bhagavad Gita we also see a shloka where he clearly says that he is the supreme enjoyer, supreme well-wisher, and supreme controller. But even then he's so powerful. We can see him displaying this. So he doesn't, want to be introduced, as a great personality, so yeah, so that's what is, hence, we see that the devotees of Krishna also want to follow his footsteps, right? They are really, very humble, they are selfless, and also they are service oriented. So they want to serve, like Krishna always is ready to serve his devotees. Yeah, even to the extent of all these activities which he does. Yeah. So the last but one topic of today was patch-up solution or perfect solution. Here we see that Pandavas, we saw that they had all those success factors, right, to get victorious. So with Arjuna, last week we also briefly touched upon that Arjuna went into depression. And this happens in the second half of the chapter, in the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita, that, and we see that Arjuna, he had everything required to be successful, right? He had, Krishna with him, he had the right environment, he had good management skills, a team. So everything, right? See, he had everything to be successful. But still, he had a bit of mental balance. And he went into depression, anxiety, confusion, right? And we also saw last time that how Arjuna is not any ordinary person. He is an extraordinary person, right? So if he went under depression, then that must be, so we can correlate this with our day-to-day life, that we all undergo depression, anxiety, stress in our day-to-day life. And how did Arjuna come out of this situation? When Krishna spoke to him Bhagavad Gita. So that's where we can correlate that to us, that, Bhagavad Gita gives us that motivation. It was a motivational talk by Krishna to Arjuna. So it gives us that motivation to come out of our depression, anxiety, and confusion, right? So it is still very relevant in this generation, not just that it was applicable 5,000 plus years ago, right? So Krishna spoke such motivational talk that it allowed eventually Arjuna to, focus on his goal and to get back. And not only to get back and fight by focusing on the goal, but he also came out victorious, right? So if we follow Krishna, there will be victory in the end. Yeah. So and it's not about just us, right? At the personal level that we undergo this. We saw in this COVID situation throughout how even at the level of government, they were really anxious, right? As how to control, right? So it's not about being powerful or not, because when it comes to COVID, we could see that as developed countries as the US as well, they were impacted with some, 880,000 cases or something. So it's like, so that's the thing, even though we have, we are powerful, we are, we have everything, but still, there is misbalance, like we learned before. So now, what does this call for? So with Bhagavad Gita, I think that motivation, Arjuna's mind, it was regulated, and we have to apply the same, right, in our day-to-day life. So with this said, Arjuna, while he was depressed, he put forward some 5 reasons, in front of Krishna, as why he is under depression and why does he want to back out from the war, right? The first reason was compassion. Yes. So let's quickly go through the shloka and then I'll give a brief on this. So Arjuna uvacha drishtve mam swajanam Krishna yuyutsam samupastitam sa siddhanti mama gatrani mukham cha parishushyati. So Arjuna said, my dear Krishna, seeing my friends and relatives present before me in such a fighting spirit, I feel the limbs of my body quivering and my mouth drying up. So I think we all agree here that, fighting with friends and relatives, it's not a good thing, right? And Arjuna was put into such a situation where he had to fight his, different relations, father, grandfather, all kind of relations were present there. So, but somehow, so let's just see, why? Because one of the key qualities which Arjuna had was compassion, right? And so Arjuna, was he right being in compassion in that particular situation? That's the question. So Krishna, Arjuna actually is a Kshatriya, right? He's a leader. And what is the meaning of Kshatriya? They protect their, people from harm, right? So that was Arjuna's position. So he was a leader, right? He was in a leadership position. And, being in a leadership position, he cannot be self-oriented because the people he is fighting with, they are their friends and relatives. That is not the ground, right? Because we need to see whether it is dharma or adharma side. So that's important. And that's why we say that compassion is a great quality, but it has to be rightly placed, right? So, for example, we have a judge, right, in the court, and there is a verdict. And, if the person, if the person who is being, convicted, if it is judge's relative or friend, should that make the judge change his decision? No, right? So he's in a responsible position and he has to take the right decision, based on the acts of the person, right? So similarly, Arjuna, irrespective of his own personal relationships, he's at a position. So he is at that level where he has to be responsible and he has to think in a wider spin. So that's how he has to think. And when we are in such a responsible position, we have to take appropriate actions so that we can establish dharma, right? So Krishna then explains further in chapters where he addresses this for Arjuna in detail. But we are just going touching the aspects which Arjuna raised as and the second aspect which Arjuna raised was enjoyment. Yeah. So the shloka goes, na cha shreyo anupashyami hatva swajanam ahave na kangshe vijayam Krishna na cha rajyam sukhani cha. So Arjuna is saying, I do not see how any good can come from killing my own kinsmen in this battle, nor can I, my dear Krishna, desire any subsequent victory, kingdom or happiness. So it is a right statement that even if he wins the kingdom, how can he enjoy, after killing and whom will he enjoy with? Because he's killing his own friends and relatives. We all work so hard, right, in our day-to-day life. Why? To keep our family and friends happy. Yeah. And the same was with Arjuna. So what's his fault? So here the difference is he is representing, a public, right? And he should not be, caring about his self-enjoyment, right? When we are at that position, we have to learn to sacrifice, right? If leaders think about their own enjoyment, then for the public at large, it will not be right? For example, we had this again, COVID situation, right? So doctors were the most one which were in that, critical position, right? It was their time, right? But if they think that, no, I might get COVID and they sit back at home, is that fair? No, because they're in a responsible position. They are the front line. So they have to get in there, right? So without, that kind of sacrifice, no one can be, a leader or in such a responsible position. So if if someone wants to only think about themselves for their own enjoyment, then that person, it's better that they step down from such leadership position, right? So similarly, when we correlate this in our day-to-day life, we all are performing a kind of leadership responsibility in our day-to-day life as well. For example, if there is a mother, mother carrying a child, there is a sacrifice, right? As basic as maybe what if we say that it's too hot in summers, it's so hot I cannot cook because I cannot cook in kitchen, it's more hot. That's not possible, right? So we have to sacrifice for whom? For our. So, and similarly, father, right? What if says, I want to enjoy, why should I struggle so much? Go out and earn. No, let me enjoy on my own. So because he is in a responsible position to take care of the family, he cannot just think about his own, right? So he has to think in a wider frame. So self-enjoyment, when you are in a responsible position, that comes secondary. Yeah. So, and the third factor, which Arjuna brought up after compassion and enjoyment, was sinful reactions. Yeah. So the shloka goes like, Papam eva shrayed asman hataitan atatainaham tasman narhavayam hantu tritrashtran sabandhavan swajanam hi katham hatva sukhinaha shama madhava. So sin will overcome us if we slay such aggressors. Therefore, it will not be proper for us to kill the sons of Dhritarashtra and our friends. What should we gain, O Krishna, husband of goddess of fortune? And how could we be happy by killing our own kinsman? Right? So Arjuna is saying here that if we kill, we will get sin, because killing is a bad action, right? And we all know that, right? Killing is not right. Yeah, it is a most sinful reaction. But also we learned last week, I had mentioned this, that as per our Vedas, there are 6 kind of aggressors. And the Vedas, the scripture says that, if a person performs any of these aggressors, they should be immediately killed. And what were these 6 aggressors? A person who gives poison to somebody who sets fire to the house, right? Someone who attacks by deadly weapons, or one who takes away others' riches, right? And then one who occupies another's land, right? And we saw that Kauravas, Duryodhana, he performed all of these activities, like poisoning of Bhima. He tried to do that. He tried to set the fire, where Pandavas were, with that Lakshagraha. So we could see that, Duryodhana performed all these 6 aggressors, right? So it will be, as per our scriptures, it is, killing these aggressors would be not sinful. It would be rather Arjuna's duty to do that. Yeah. So with this, the fourth and the last reason he gave was destruction of family tradition. Yeah, the shloka is Kulakshaye pranashyanti kuladharma sanatanaha dharme nashte kulam krishnam adharmo abhibhavati utha. With the destruction of the dynasty, the entire family tradition is vanquished, and thus the rest of the family becomes involved in irreligion, right? So till now, Arjuna was talking all the factors before this based on self, right? It was self-centered. But now he's talking at large, right? That, it will impact further tradition, generations of the family. Yeah. So, but, almost all the, on the field of Kurukshetra, we know that almost all the famous personalities of the world were there at that time, right? So we have to understand that, again, the basis of this is, if Duryodhana would have won, for example, the war, right? If Arjuna would have not, fought, and Duryodhana's party would have, either way, the family traditions would go, because adharma is there, the king who is performing, who to the extent of the king that he could poison others, who could disrobe Draupadi in public. What couldn't he do for his mass, right? For his kingdom people. So it would anyhow be more worse, right? Having the Duryodhana in there. So, and on the other side, when you have Krishna there with Arjuna needn't worry, right? Because Krishna is acting as a, for example, in our day-to-day life, when each projects in corporate have a project manager, right? So when we have the project manager managing the overall piece, we shouldn't be anxious on these small aspects there, as why are we doing this and that? Because, the person who is responsible to keep things in order, which is the manager, is right there, right? So, and also, when we were small children, did we ever go and question to our parents that, will you be able to provide me food tomorrow? No, right? Our children don't do that as well, because we are there to manage, right? The things around. So in presence of Krishna, Arjuna having this doubt was not right. So that makes us move to, we covered all the 4 aspects which Arjuna raised as not to fight the war. And we also learned how his doubts were, his reasons for not to fight the war, how they were justified by Krishna, right? In brief. So with that, I'll hand it over to Sri Gaur Prabhu for going ahead with the last agenda topic for today, which is practical tip of the day.
Lord Mataji, thank you for taking us through this important topic. So we'll move on to some of the important practical tips relevant to today's session. Now, we talked a lot about, what happened during the war or before the war of Kurukshetra, right? So Nikita Mataji took us through some of the success factors, and also what is in it for me, in a sense that how can we apply those success factors to our own lives, right? So moving to that, like if you move to the first bullet point here, make your home auspicious, regular worship and chanting the names of Lord, keeping cleanliness. Now, the basis and culmination of spiritual life is what? Is it going to temples? Is it offering tulsi leaves, tulsi garlands, going to different places of pilgrimage, reading a number of scriptures? What is the basis? What do we call a life as a spiritual life? Because, after the first session, a devotee called me saying that, what you talk about spirituality, but what is spirituality, right? So the spirituality is all this, right? Going to temples, going to places of pilgrimage, taking bath in holy rivers, reading scriptures. But the basis and culmination of spirituality is the chanting of holy names. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. It is everything, end to end. Right? So if we chant the holy names, it has everything in it, the mantra, right? Nama Chintamani Krishna, Chaitanya Rasa Vigra, Purna Shuddho Nitya Mukto, Abhinnam Nama Namina. That this name, Krishna, is non-different from Krishna himself. It has everything. It's like a touchstone, right? So if we chant the names of Krishna, not only will our house be auspicious, but it will be like an ashram, right? Most of us or all of us attending the sessions are grastas, and we are in grast ashram, right? It's not my flat or my bungalow. It's a ashram. Ashram is where Krishna is there, right? And Nikita Mataji has already talked about, not worshipping Lakshmi ji exclusively, right? If we worship Krishna, then Lakshmi ji or our good destiny will always be with us. Association of the devotees is what helps us to take our spiritual life forward, right? Nikita Mataji highlighted a point like, you tell me who your friends are and I will tell you who you are, right? So you should associate with devotees, right, who can really help you. And then when we talked about, what were the reasons which Arjuna put forward for not fighting, right? We know and we understood that compassion should be rightly positioned and placed, right? Having compassion for terrorists is not the right thing, right? Having compassion for people, who are doing wrong things is not the right thing, right? Then we all in some way or the other are in one or the other leadership position, whether we are housewives, like when we were in Vrindavan, I met some senior devotees, and at that time, like my wife was not a practicing doctor, and she was taking care of her children, right? And they asked me like, what does your wife do? And I said that she's just a housewife. And then they replied, just an housewife? That is the most important work, my dear friend. So even just a housewife for us is in itself a big leadership position. Managing the house, the children, the husband is not an easy task, right? So that is in itself a leadership position, right? So we have to be selfless. And we see, right? We see everyone around, our parents, right? How selfless were they in bringing us up as a nice individual, right? And we also, as parents, we bring our kids struggling up and down, in and out, right? And yes, the next bullet is conscious of sinful reactions. We cannot just close our eyes and think that, oh, we will never be impacted whatever we do. So we should be conscious, and Bhagavad Gita helps us to understand, right? Not just superficial things, but really looking deep into things, right? And there's one more bullet, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, depend on Krishna. Like, this is sum and bonum, because Duryodhana had everything, right? If you compare what Duryodhana had with Pandavas, I think so Duryodhana had much more, right? He has much more Akshayani of Sena. He had powerful warriors like Bhishma, right? Drona, Karna, right? They were very powerful, almost undefeated, right? But the only thing he didn't have was Krishna, and he was like so arrogant. What to talk about depending on Krishna? He would he was envious of Krishna, right? He would dare to even put him behind bars, when he became a Shanti Dut, right? So this is something which we don't want to be. This is where we should run away from Duryodhana mentality. We should more and more depend on Krishna, and then last verse of Bhagavad Gita, 18. Dhruva nitir matir mama. Wherever there is Krishna, the master of all mystics, and wherever there is Arjuna, the supreme archer, there will also certainly be opulence, victory, extraordinary power, and morality. That is my opinion. So it's like a combination. When you go to a Pizza Hut or McDonald's, what they say, oh, you take this combo, right? And you get an offer. And here is what is being offered to you in Bhagavad Gita. You take a combo of what? Krishna and a devotee. So you become devotee and bring Krishna into your life. And then what you get is not just discount, but more than that. You get opulence, you get victory, you get extraordinary power, and you get morality. These are such important things, for us not to be just successful and happy in this life, but also to look beyond this life, right? So this is, sum and substance, and, like a assurance of Krishna that, if you bring me in your life, you will have these four important things: opulence, victory, power, and morality, right? And how can we bring Krishna in our life? Again, we'll move on to the next slide, and this is same as what we recited last time. What is the Yuga Dharma? Harinam Sankirtan, right? Krate Adhyayato Vishnu, Tretayam Yajato Makhe, Dwapare Paricharyayam Kalo Tadhari Kirtana. The chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram Hare. This is the easiest way to bring Krishna in your lives, right? And why only this mantra? Why is it this mantra so important? Why is this mantra so powerful? It's because it is mentioned in Kali Santrana Upanishad that, and who spoke this? This verse was spoken by our great-grandfather. Who is that? Brahmaji. Brahmaji spoke this verse to Narad Muni. And for many, like Narad Muni, maybe, someone who creates problem in everyone's life. No, my dear friends. Narad Muni is a spiritual master. He's a guru of Vyasdev. He is in a very high position. Narad Muni has initiated so many, souls like Dhruv Maharaj, Prahlad Maharaj. He's a spiritual master of Vyasdev. He gave instructions to Yudhishthir. So Narad Muni is at a very high level. And this Narad Muni is getting instructions from Brahmaji. What instruction is he getting? Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Iti Shodashakam Nam Kali Kalmasha Nashnam Nata Parantarupaya Sarva Vedeshu Drishyate. So Narad Muni was, thinking that how people in this Kali Yuga will be helped. They are so sinful, their life span is so short, their mind is so fickle, they are always restless. How should we help them? What is there that can help these people of Kali Yuga? And then Brahmaji said, they have treasure. A broad spectrum antibiotic to fight the most dangerous disease. So what is that antibiotic? That antibiotic is Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. These 16 names, composed of 32 syllables, are the only means. Please try to understand. You may be chanting n number of mantras, thinking that, wow, I have done so much of piety. I am such a religious person. I'm such a spiritual person. But my dear friends, here Brahmaji is saying, only means. Only means. To counteract the evil effects of Kali Yuga. In all the Vedas, Sarva Vedeshu Drishyate, is seen that to cross over the ocean of nuisance, there is no alternate to the chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram. So, this is, as I said, this is the basis and the culmination of spiritual life. We start our spiritual life by chanting, and we continue with this chanting during the course of wherever, at whatever stage you are. We have seen so many pious devotees, right? And they keep chanting. Okay, so I'll stop here and I will open the floors if you have any questions. I saw that many of you have attempted the quiz, that was really good. And as different from many other courses we conduct, these audiences, these participants are really very intelligent, very active in a sense. A lot of you have attempted quiz, and not only attempted, like you scored really high marks. Like I have never seen that before, So it's not only that you are attending the session, but you are attentive. right? And you may be revising it and reading it and rereading. And I see that some of you are also taking notes. So this is very important, right? I'm very thankful to you. After every session, we'll continue to post the quiz, right? Because that helps you to revise. The only purpose of having these quiz in place is that it helps you to revise, right? You can go through them. So request all of you to continue to participate in this quiz and attend the rest of the 7 sessions. Again, I just want to check before ending the session if you have any question. I don't see any question on chat box. Okay, that says a lot about the session. Good. So I think so you have all understood it. So thank you.